Welcome, everyone, to another powerful episode of the 100% podcast, where, yes, you're 100% effed up, but still simultaneously 100% lovable. And nothing that you've done and nothing that has been done to you ever diminishes how truly lovable you are. I'm your host, Chaya Garcia, relationship expert, and I have an amazing guest today that I'm so thrilled to have on our stage, Katie Lain. Katie Lain is the founder of Thrive Alcohol Recovery and a former high-functioning drinker who struggled with alcohol for nearly a decade. She tried everything: therapy, willpower, taking breaks, but nothing worked in the long term until she discovered something that changed her life: the Sinclair Method. This medication-assisted approach helps people unlearn alcohol addiction at the brain level without requiring total abstinence, using neuroscience and behavioral change. Katie Lain, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story of alcoholism, of breaking through from that, of self-love, and also the abusive relationship that you were in, I guess, with yourself and another, that kind of helped you break free into understanding truly like who you are and what your purpose is. So first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm truly honored. And what was not mentioned in my bio is that part of my alcohol addiction story was an abusive relationship I was in for 5 years, mentally, physically, emotionally abusive, and they kind of went hand in hand. So I'm happy to tell this full story today with hopes it just helps others who might be struggling with one or all of the things that I struggled with as well.
Yes, there is so much alcoholism that sometimes is alcoholism and sometimes it's running from pain of relationships that are hurting us so bad we don't know how to make it stop, and that's our way. But diving right into your abusive relationship, I like to start at the end, or a pivotal moment. What was that last straw, or one of the worst moments that happened to you that you can explain, kind of zoom in what he said, what he did, how you felt, and why that was one of the turning moments where you realized it was worse than you were giving it credit for?
Yeah, it was actually at the end of our relationship, like the last day I ever even saw him. This was back in 2015, 2016. I'd have to think back on the years. No, I'm sorry, 2013. We'd been together for 5 years, and the typical kind of love bombing romance in the beginning, but then fast forward 5 years, and I know we're going to talk about that, but a lot of abuse had happened. And part of that abuse was verbal and kind of talking down to me and causing me to get to a place where at that 5-year mark, I felt so like I couldn't get out of it. Like I was worthless. I wasn't worthy of anybody else. And that this was like who I was supposed to be with. The kind of Stockholm syndrome with abuse is very, very real. But that last day that I saw him, and where it was really the final straw in the relationship, was we were kind of getting more and more on the rocks with our relationship and talking about potentially separating, though there was a lot of codependency there. So it wasn't something that was like in motion yet. But I had gone out and was out very late just by myself, like just processing, was at a bar. I was drinking at that point, but I was trying to be in recovery. So I was still drinking that night though, but trying to keep it under control, I should say. And I got home and he was just livid that I had been gone, and not answering my phone for a few hours. Cause it was like, I never left his sight basically for 5 years. And that was when he just like freaked out and was the most like abusive in a way that I had never seen him in 5 years, where I got in the shower when I got home and I locked the door and he wanted to talk and I didn't want to talk, and he ended up beating down the shower door, coming into the shower, shouting all kind of profanities, F you, I'm gonna effing kill you, slamming my head against the shower wall. Just like I literally thought in that moment, like, am I gonna die? Because my head was just smashing up against the tile in the shower. And thank God, one of our neighbors ended up calling the cops. And so, between that moment when the cops got there, I kind of like ducked out of the shower and snuck into our bedroom and shut the door and locked it, called his dad and was like, I'm scared to death. He's abusing me. And then like right after that, the cop showed up, and that kind of, thank God, broke everything up. And I ended up I was in a different state than my family. I just left like the next day with basically a bag. I left everything, and that was the end of the relationship.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It was, I think it was what I needed because I believe in God now, but at the time I didn't. But I remember praying, like, I need to get a sign to get out of here because, like, things keep getting worse and worse, and I am still not leaving. Like, give me a sign to get out. And I think that moment, like, our neighbors hearing what he was saying, calling the cops, that intervention. Have to say, when the cops showed up, I lied and said, oh, no, I'm fine. He didn't do anything, because that's like what the abused person does. I look back on that and I'm just like, gosh, like he could have been arrested. You know, he was literally guilty of a crime, but I lied. But at the same time, his dad was always kind of like someone that took care of me. He cared about me. And so his dad came and picked me up and then like took me to the airport and I went home. So there was help there, but yeah, he didn't go to jail or anything.
So interesting how the dad picked you up from his own son who almost killed you. What's that? Did not to go off just a tiny tangent.
Yeah.
Did your ex's mother was she very abusive that the father related to you as like an abuse victim that he maybe couldn't get himself out of an abusive relationship but try to get you out of it? Like how is he showing up for you and not showing up for his son? Like, what dynamic was there in his marriage with his mother, his wife?
Yeah. There's an interesting kind of backstory there because my ex's mother, or his dad's wife, she died when my ex was like 8. So she got like really sick with cancer and they tried everything to heal her and nothing worked. So she died when he was a child, and the dad, he dated people but never really remarried. I think that was kind of the love of his life. But what's interesting with our story with my ex, and I think part of the reason I stayed so long, is that I grew up with his family. So I live in California now. They were from California, but I grew up in Oregon. But they had a vacation house next door to my grandfather's house. So I spent holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, summers, like hanging out with his family. And so his dad was someone, he was just always like cooking for people and being, caring toward people. And so he knew me since I was a child. And he was always the one throughout the 5 years of our abusive relationship. He was always the one kind of coming to the rescue. Like, my boyfriend at the time would go stay at his dad's house when we would fight. And then his dad would like buy us concert tickets and like give us money to go out to dinner to kind of like rekindle our relationship when his son would be abusive. So I think, first of all, the dad didn't know the fullest extent of the abuse. He knew we were having problems, but he didn't know that it had become like so physically and emotionally and psychologically abusive. And so when I called his dad that day, I think he was kind of like, wait, what? Like, this is happening? And so he kind of saw the truth. And I think yet again, he was kind of coming in to save his son, basically, and do what needed to be done because I was in danger. He was kind of always, I think, because the mom dying and because my ex didn't have a mom growing up, the dad was kind of, he bought them whatever they wanted and, like kind of coddled them a bit. So I think he did that in our relationship to protect his son in a way. So yeah, does that make sense? It's a little bit of like a complex web.
I mean, it always is, but
yeah.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense that he couldn't, one of a different podcast guests was so illuminating. People just marry their guilt or they act out in guilt. And so, he couldn't save his wife, so he does everything he can to save his child. But the reality is when we stop our children from feeling pain, they also stop growing and learning lessons that they need to become healthy, responsible adults. So now you have an unhealthy, irresponsible adult who doesn't have to feel the wounds or the pain of his behavior, which means he can lash out and go as crazy as he wants because, again, he's not being held responsible due to the way that he was raised and his dad always trying to save him from suffering.
Yeah. And I have to say, too, like, I think a lot of women struggle with this. I know I personally did when it was like, I would see him and I had such a broken heart for him because I could see that he lost his mom and that was very devastating for him. And I could see these imperfections in him. And so like when he would lash out or be abusive or say hurtful things, I would be like, oh, but he's traumatized. He lost his mom, he had a rough childhood. And so that was like the fixer in me, kind of seeing the potential in him and like, well, maybe it'll get better. And I think that was a big thing, many other things, but that was one of the things that kept me there as long as it did. Like I felt really sorry for him and what he went through as a kid, losing his mom.
Yeah, I mean, Katie, that is like classic codependency of like, I see his potential. He's really good inside. You just don't get to see it all the time. And if I just love him more, if I just make love to him more, if I just have better times, and maybe he'll stop or grow. Whatever. So, I mean, it's funny when we're not in it. But for everyone listening, if, I'm a relationship expert, so I break it down for my clients so simple. If you want to help him, unhealthy relationship, eventually toxic. If you are already inspired by who he is, healthy relationship, potential for sustainability. Amen. But if we break it down there, you want to help him, fucking run. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, that was something there were so many things I didn't see at the time. Like looking back, I didn't even know what the term narcissistic personality disorder meant. And throughout our relationship, my gut, and that was something I completely ignored the whole time, was my gut. Like something was off with him where I was like, he's just different. Like he would be weird socially, he would lash out, it was always about him, and couldn't quite put my finger on it. When I learned about what narcissism was, I was like, oh, and I know we throw that term around a lot, but like he was a true classic narcissist. And like part of us kind of growing up together too, that's a piece of the story where we grew up together, our families did, and I had such a huge crush on him. And so when we first got together and he love bombed the heck out of me, I thought this was like my childhood dream coming true. Like this man I had a crush on since I was like 10 years old was finally dating me and paying attention to me. And so when the love bombing kind of faded and then the abuse started, I had that image in my head of like, he's my Prince Charming. Like I have to make this work. This is my childhood crush. So that was another thing that kept me there as well.
Yeah, so many times we love the fantasy of what it could be versus the reality of what it is. What were some of the things he said to you in the beginning that were quote unquote love bombing? I mean, I believe that it was love bombing, but I just want, what are the things that he said to you, if you can remember, that made you feel like this was special or a different, unique soulmate relationship?
Yeah, there were so many things. So again, I was living in Oregon and he was in California because they had a vacation house in Oregon. So that's how we met, and he would come up there to visit. But we had kind of lost touch as we got older and grew up and weren't seeing each other as much. And we weren't dating or anything. He always had other girlfriends. So when we rekindled, it was oddly enough at my grandfather's funeral, and he was single, I was single, and we were just like, oh my gosh, like, wow. And sparks flew because of course he was my childhood crush and he was finally paying attention to me. So our relationship started long distance for the first 6 months because I was finishing college in Oregon and he was about to start law school in California. So he would come up to Oregon to visit me and would drive straight through. It was like a 12, 13-hour drive. And he was just like, I have to come see you. And he would drive all the way, cook a special dinner, bring flowers, go out of his way to see me and make me feel just so special that someone would drive all that way just for a couple nights and cook me dinner and do all of these wonderful things. And then he would literally write me poetry. I wish I had the emails now, but I deleted them at some point. But there were so many emails, and I'm guessing they were written from him, but just the most romantic poetry of how much he loved me and cared about me and didn't want anyone to steal me away from him and how important I was to him. And then I would come and visit him in California during our long distance time, and he would just make it so special. And at that time, I had just turned 21, and this is kind of where the drinking came in. He already had an alcohol problem. So when I would come down to California and visit, it would the booze would flow. We would have champagne and cocktails and go out to amazing dinners. And that, of course, enhanced the romance. But it also made it fun, honestly. Like, I wasn't a big drinker then, but I was like, oh yeah, it's fun to have like mimosas with a brunch or whatever. But when I would come to California for like a weekend, he would just like wine and dine me. There'd always be drinks and cocktails and doing things like that. And so, and it was like the things he would say too, of just like, I don't want anyone to steal you away from me. Like, you are the one. Like, you are so special to me. Like, I want you to move to California to be with me. Like, finish school, come to California. And just like, as if like I was like the most important thing in the world to him, and he was afraid someone would steal me from him. So as soon as I graduated college, he came up to Oregon, helped me pack up all my stuff. We drove to California. He was paying for a beautiful house for us to live in. Like, he was paying most of the rent. But literally the first night when I got to California and was living here, that was the night the abuse started. He threw a chair across the room and it broke, and it like barely missed me. And I was like, what? And completely unexpected after like this 6-month long distance romance where I was getting emails, love poems, him saying all these nice things, like making our weekends together amazing. He would like call me and leave voicemails with like Marvin Gaye playing in the background. He's like, I don't know what it is, but I'm always listening to all this like romance music because of you. So like there were probably a million other things he was doing, but it was just constant inundation of like, oh, and he would book us like amazing romantic bed and breakfast where like they'd have rose petals on the bed for like couple, like just stuff like that. It was constant for 6 months. Plus we were apart. So I was like always missing him, always wanting to be with him, finally being able to move to California, and then everything changed.
Can we talk about that night where he literally saw, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here. He saw you as property and literally was like, I need you to be mine, and I will make sure that you can't think of anyone else but me, because I'm going to be so extravagant in my behavior and my words, which everything you said is not even in the realm of normal. I mean, the movies do it, but that's not real. And then as soon as you became his property, because now you are under his roof, his facade of all of that, like fishing, it's like fishing, like you're sitting in the water, pulling. But now that he has the fish out of the water and it's in his bucket, his whole mentality, his whole system of abuse changed. And so you want to start there? He threw a chair at you.
Yeah.
I mean, next to the wall that almost hit you, like the rage started. I mean, obviously there's nothing that really causes that behavior. It's always very unpredictable and shocking. But what happened then when you finally, gave him what he wanted, which is no one can steal you because you're with him in Cali under his guise? How did his behavior change? What shifted? And why did he say it shifted?
Yeah, and I want to like touch on something you said briefly, because you're like, oh, the movies are like that. And to be honest, like my parents did the best they could raising me. I love them. Like I have a great relationship with them. But I was so naive at that time that I literally thought this romance was like a movie. Like that was what I thought love was. And this is just like how naive my 21-year-old self was. I didn't have any world experience. And again, I thought this is my childhood crush. We're finally together. It's going to be the happily ever after, especially after the 6 months of love bombing. So I had this completely misguided, misinformed perception of like what a real relationship even is. And I think I was, like you mentioned earlier, the fantasy I was living in. I think I kept going back to that, like, this is what we are, right? But that first night, so he had used the bathroom and left the toilet seat up, and there was like a little bit of pee like on the toilet bowl, and I just gently said like, oh hey, like would you mind leaving the toilet seat down after you use it? And he came in a little bit after and like peed all over the toilet, and it just pissed him off because I asked him to do that. And drinking was involved. And I don't remember what exactly escalated to the chair being thrown, but we were arguing at that time, I think over the toilet seat thing. And he just snapped and picked up this chair and threw it across the room and blamed it on me. And that was something, again, like for probably like almost the whole 5 years we were together, I really always believed that everything was my fault. And I can't like articulate exactly the manipulation tactic he was using, but somehow it came back to be my fault, like my tone. How dare I suggest he put the toilet seat down? Like, this is his house, we just moved to California, or he just moved me to California. So it could be anything that would set off a fight like that, and it would just escalate, especially with the alcohol being involved. And yeah, he would just snap. And then what his strategy often was he would like cut me off. And so initially it was him like locking himself in a room and not talking to me the rest of the night, and then I would feel desperate trying to like communicate with him and keep the connection there. Or the longer we were together, he would like drive an hour away to where his dad lived and stay there and have his phone off for like days, and I'd be like alone. After a few years into our relationship, we shared a car. Like, he just kept isolating me more and more. I wasn't talking to my family. And so I was completely dependent on him. So if he left and didn't talk to me for 3 days, I was like alone at my house without a car, and I wasn't talking to my family. And that was like a couple years in, and it gotten to that point. But yeah, there was like such good manipulation, subtle over time, that I genuinely believe, like, he would tell me, you're never going to do better than me. I'm the best thing that's ever happened to you. Everyone else is jealous of you. Like, these things that I genuinely believed. Yeah. So sorry, a bit more than what you asked, but it's all connected.
I mean, there's nothing that I'm asking in it. It's all connected. I think it's so important that, you understand that you are a victim of narcissism and that there's patterns that are so similar. And if we don't know them, we don't know them. And when you said you were a 21 naive girl, like, I have clients from 20s to 70s. I have quite a few clients in their 70s and 30, 40, 50. And the 7-year-olds don't know what the 20-year-olds don't know, because it's like Chinese. If you don't learn Chinese, you don't just become knowledgeable in the Chinese language just because you turned 50 or you turned 60. And these things aren't taught, hence why the podcast is here to illuminate these patterns. But you should just feel so grateful that you got out alive. And it's okay that you didn't know, but the abuse is so insidious. Like, the fact that he would make you lose your sense of self and tell you that you can never get anyone better than him, and make you feel like you're just a scared, small person in this world, and he is the one who has your power. It's it's a frightening thing to do that, especially because you didn't know where to go or who even to talk to, because he tried to keep you more and more away from friends and family.
Yeah. And I was embarrassed also. Like, there was a point in time a year before I left, so about 4 years into the relationship, where my family could see what was going on. I'm sure everyone could. I was just the only one that couldn't. And they pretended that they were coming down to California to visit me. And what it was an intervention that they staged for both my drinking and the relationship. Like, my dad told me after the fact, like, I thought he was going to kill you. Like, I was seriously, like, I was losing sleep for years. And I had cut my family off for a year. Didn't, like, for that year 4 to 5 with him, I didn't talk to my family because they tried to come in and do that intervention. Oh man, he was so livid about that, as you can imagine. And ended up kicking my family out of the house, breaking a bunch of stuff. And so at that point, I was kind of forced to choose between my family and him. And I ended up choosing him because he had me believing that everyone was just jealous of me, and I was living my life in California and it's what I wanted, and they were just trying to like bring me down. It was just like all these lies I believed, because I really did want to live in California. And, there were good aspects of my life, like, apart from that relationship that I liked. So I really believe that, yeah, my family was just trying to like hurt me and drag me down, and didn't have my best intention in mind, and that he did. And so I chose him over my family and completely cut them off, changed my number, didn't talk to anyone for a year. And the abuse, as you can imagine, just got even worse from there, because I was completely cut off from everybody who actually loved me and actually cared about me. But leading up to that point, like the intervention, I hadn't told anyone in my family I was being abused, because I was embarrassed and ashamed. Like, this was supposed to be my fairy tale romance, and my family all knew him. They'd known him since we were kids because we all grew up together. They didn't know that side of him, of course. But so I kept it to myself and kind of just would pretend like everything is okay. And so when it all finally came to a head, it was like, a lot to reveal to people, because I'd kept it concealed. But even when they came down to do the intervention, like, I'm sure they could spot his narcissistic tendencies and how he treated me. I had gotten really skinny. I kind of developed an eating disorder. Looking back, I think it was a way for me to control things. And so I was just like, and I think also I just remember feeling like I want to take up as little space as possible. And that was like being like a stick figure thin. And I was just like drinking my calories. So yeah, some of the, kind of aspects of the story as well. Like, and the techniques they do, it's isolation, it's manipulation, it's abuse. And then even after the abuse, you know, I think the longer we were together, the less he would be apologetic. But for the first few years, you know, he would hit me or beat me or do horrible things. And then he would like bring me flowers and be like, I'm so sorry. And like get on his knees and cry. And I would feel really bad and take him back. And then we could have really good times together. You know, we were drinking a lot. We were partying. We had a very passionate relationship. So then we could be good for a while, and then the abuse would start again, and it would just be the same cycle. But toward the end, like, he was less and less apologetic, and that's when his dad really started to step in to try to salvage our relationship and like, here guys, I got you tickets to a concert at a winery, like, go enjoy yourself kind of thing, to try to help us, you know, stay together. Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy how you can see now how what started off as you being like, I found my prince,
Yeah.
to like, I almost died because he, you know, slammed my head in the shower one day. And the intermediate of feeling like you don't know what's real or what's not real, and who you can trust and who you can't trust, and the confusion that goes with the abuse and the eating disorder and the alcoholism. I think that, you know, it's something that I want to touch upon because it's very common that women are drinking or getting high, but sometimes it's a byproduct of trying to shut down the pain that they feel, but through a relationship abuse. And if they were only to change the relationship, you know, so much of their physical symptoms or their drinking problems wouldn't have so much of a hold on them. So, what was your addiction like once the pain started?
Yeah.
And how did you spiral into your eating disorder or your alcoholism specifically?
Yeah, and like with the relationship, like the first night I moved to California, he threw the chair. But like the abuse got gradually worse over the years. And so initially, like when I first moved there, it wasn't that extreme. It progressed. But initially, the first thing I noticed with the drinking, because when I was visiting him, he was visiting me, we would drink and stuff, but it was like weekends, or we'd be at a bed and breakfast or out to dinner or mimosas. And so I thought it was more like a weekend celebratory thing. But one of the first things I noticed is that he was drinking every day when I moved there. And we'd go out to dinner and each have like a beer or two, and I'd be good. I wouldn't want any more. And then he'd want to stop at the store and get like a fifth or like a little bottle of vodka or whiskey on the way home, or a 6-pack. I was like, why do you want to keep drinking? That's weird. And so what happened is we'd get home, or he'd be drinking, and he'd be drinking on his own, and I wouldn't be drinking with him because I wasn't that much of a drinker at that time. And so what started to happen is he'd be drinking and smoking weed and kind of partying on his own, and I'd be like in the other room, like not. And so I started to see, well, like if I'm not doing that with him, there's this wedge kind of being built between us. And so I started partaking in like the drinks or the marijuana or whatever. And initially I was like, okay, yeah, this is fun. Our relationship wasn't super abusive at that point. It was starting to build, but we would just have fun drinking and partying. And within probably 6 months of living in California, I was like a daily drinker then as well. And I was like, oh, drinking's so fun. Why didn't I like it before? And that's when the addiction started to like set in. And I liked drinking before, but I wasn't like a daily binge drinker or anything. So the addiction set in, and initially it was like, this is fun. We party together. It gets destructive sometimes, but it's mostly fun, like maybe the first 6 months or a year. And then it just continued to escalate from there to where, yeah, it certainly became a coping mechanism and a daily tool for everything, to numb out, to escape. You know, when we would fight, it would allow me to forget about it. And then with the eating disorder, it kind of came hand in hand, because he would make comments Like when he would give me food, he would give me like the little, I think he kind of started it, but it was my own, I think, like way to control it. But he would give me like a little bit of food, or he'd be like, you eat like a little bird. And so I think like he wanted me to be thinner. Not that I was like super overweight or anything when we started dating. I wasn't probably overweight at all, maybe a little chubby in my stomach or something. But I just saw it like as a way for me to earn his approval. I was like, oh, okay, like if I'm skinnier, he'll love me more. And so that kind of went hand in hand with that. And drinking would kind of kill my appetite. And so I would drink a lot of my calories. And yeah, he had a drinking problem before we got together. He was a few years older than me. And I just quickly caught up with him. And over the years, the drinking certainly contributed to the arguments and the fights. And it got to be at a point like I would wake up, at 6 a.m. and he would already be sitting on the couch, like smoking a joint and taking shots of vodka. That was his like kind of drinking style, just functional all day. And I fell into that myself as well. And yeah, it was a part of our relationship from essentially the beginning when I moved in. And it was like hard to even be around him when we weren't drinking. Like there were periods where I would try to take a break because I realized it was a problem, or, try to not drink for a few days or even a month. And we didn't have a ton of things in common and like a strong connection when I wasn't drinking, because the drinking really bonded us. Like when you're drunk and high, or we would do other drugs, like it bonds you in a way. You hang out with people you wouldn't normally if you have this addiction in common. So I think in some ways, like had I not fallen into that, maybe I could have seen the situation more clearly for what it was, and I think it led to a lot of the confusion, because I was literally drunk and high every day for most of those 5 years. So yeah, and that takes away your confidence and clarity and all of that. Yeah. So you mentioned like getting out of it and you'll stop. And that was something I kind of believed incorrectly, that, okay, if I can just get out of this abusive relationship, then I'll want to stop. Because when my family came and did the intervention on me, it did wake me up to my drinking problem. And so I tried to quit drinking. I was like trying and failing. But I started to get more sobriety under my belt. And that's when I started to perhaps see things a bit more clearly. Like maybe he's not who I think he is. And he didn't like that. He didn't like that I was sober. He didn't like that he was the kind of person I had to be with him all the time. If I went out to a store for a couple hours by myself, I would have 30 missed calls from him. And I'd get like, he'd be so mad when I got home, like, where were you, kind of thing. So I couldn't have my own thoughts or ideas. I remember I started going to a spiritual group, like a Buddhist group at the time. I'm a Christian now, but I was like exploring Buddhism then. And he like made fun of me and mocked me. He just thought it was ridiculous because I was like trying to live my own life apart from him, and that was not tolerated at all.
Yeah, I mean, his need for control over you was just like expressed in literally every area. And one of the things that I want to highlight is like, in the beginning, you realize like, well, if he's going to drink and drug and I'm not, then I don't get the emotional intimacy that I want and need. And your need for emotional intimacy, which is so valid and so real, was like this like gentle rock that came into this insane mountain of like, I'm just going to smoke and drink with you because I want to be close to you, because I don't want to be isolated, because I don't want to be abandoned in my room, because I don't want to be left out. And if you're the man that I love and I want your attention, then this is what I'm going to need to do to sustain it. Even though once you get high and drunk, like no one's giving you real attention. But that was, the perception of I want to stay close to you. And if this is what you do, then I'll do it too. I mean, how has that now shifted now that you've become sober and now that you've left this abusive relationship? How does this idea of attention that you want from others, including people that you love, shifted in the way that you understand it?
Yeah. And that was something, I don't think I closed my thought fully, that when I left, finally, like when I moved away and his dad like took me to the airport and I left, I was like, okay, then my drinking is fixed because I'm not around him anymore. But that's when I really realized like, no, this is my own drinking problem, because I left the relationship and I was certainly drinking to just cope with like the trauma of the past 5 years and like try to completely forget. Like I moved and just pretended like nothing happened. And I was just trying to kind of move on with my life. Even today, like maybe a year ago, I feel like I finally like closed the the circle on that whole like trauma of that abusive relationship. And I've been married to a wonderful man now for 10 years, and he's been amazing. But I don't think I allowed myself to fully heal. I was still numbing out for a long time after that. But I finally did. Like, I haven't drank in almost 8 years now, and it's thanks to a treatment that it's a neuroscience-based treatment that's actually been around for over 30 years that actually heals the addiction in the brain. And I think I didn't know it at the time, and I think a lot of people don't, that like when I was addicted to alcohol, the reason why I couldn't stop was because my brain was craving alcohol all of the time. Like, I would try to quit. I would make it a couple days. I made it 6 months one time. I was constantly trying and failing to quit. And I always would return to it. I would always relapse again. And I didn't understand why. I thought it was because I didn't have willpower or discipline or something like that. That was a part of it, but we're human. Our willpower eventually burns out anyway. And so what I realize now is that my brain, when we learn addiction, it's learned in the reward center in the brain, and it becomes hardwired. So even when you try to quit, you still want to drink every day. That's still screaming at you. And so the treatment I used, it's called the Sinclair Method. It works to reverse the addiction neurologically in the brain, to completely heal your brain back to the place it was in, like before I ever even had my first drink. And so I started that treatment in 2017. Like 4 or 5 years after I left the relationship. I was still drinking a lot, trying to quit after that, and started the treatment. You actually start it while you're still drinking, and over time, my brain healed. And after a year on the treatment, I went from daily binge drinking to drinking like 1 glass of wine once a month, out to dinner kind of thing. No more getting drunk, no more dependency. And being in a place where I just didn't really care for alcohol anymore, which is what led me to quitting drinking almost 8 years ago now. And it's, now being in a healthy relationship, like I really feel like he was a godsend, because there was actually a time, so I'd split up with my ex after 5 years of being with him, moved back to Oregon where I'm from to kind of like get my bearings, like not know what to do, just get out of California. I didn't have anything. I didn't even have a car. I literally had a bag. I had no money, no job, nothing. And I left, spent a couple years in Oregon, but really like wanted to be back in California, which is where I am now. I've always wanted to live here. And so I was planning to move back to California and getting a job here. And I ended up talking to my ex again, like on the phone. And at the time I was like, I might see him again. Like, there was still that codependency, Stockholm syndrome, I don't know what you want to call it, where I was literally entertaining talking, like see him again. I didn't see him, but we would talk on the phone, and he knew I was coming back to California. So I moved back to California, and I hadn't seen him yet because I was living in a different town, and I bump into this guy who's now my husband and meet him. Ironically, he has the same birthday as my husband, or as my ex, but I meet him, and just like immediately I'm like, oh my gosh, like I really like this guy. And ironically enough, we met at a bar. But I feel like he was kind of a godsend to prevent me from going back to my ex, because I had such strong feelings for him like the day we met. And he's a little bit older than me, and he's just like the most stable, respectful, balanced, genuinely loving, not like a selfish kind of love like my ex was, where the love was conditional love. Like, I look back on that 5 years, I'm like, did he even love me? Like, what was that? I don't think he actually loved me. It was like the whole relationship was just this facade that I had in my mind of what it was. But yeah, so being genuinely loved by my husband, like I tell him he's like my rock, where I just feel like I've been able to heal from so many things, build my confidence, explore different avenues of like faith or career or things like that. And he's just been this like stable, loving, caring presence the whole time. And like, I don't know if I would have, like, it's not like I left the relationship and was like, I know what to look out for now. I'm not going to be in an abusive relationship again. Like, I could have easily probably fallen into another abusive relationship again, but I feel like it was a godsend. Like, my husband, just a good man coming into my life. And yeah, that has healed me more than anything.
I mean, that's such a beautiful blessing that came out from such a horrible situation.
Yeah.
And
It,
what, you go.
it was, And my husband now, like, he has allowed me to even talk, like, process a lot of the stuff about my ex with him, which is just like been amazing to be honest and open with him about what I've gone through, and him to really sympathize with me and feel for me, and just, you know, he sees like the qualities in me that my ex never saw. Like, he's always just like, you're so kind, you're so loving, you're so sweet, and he really appreciates those things. And that was, my ex would never say that about me. Like, I didn't even know those qualities until my husband would like start to call them out, you know. So being with a man who was like, you know, he wasn't going to be jealous, or like, he cared enough for me to process like what I'd gone through with my ex. And he's also someone who, he drinks like 1 or 2 glasses of wine once or twice a week. He has no drinking problem. I've never even seen him drunk. And so he was also an inspiration for me to really get my drinking issue fixed. Because when we first met and were dating in 2015, that's when like I knew I had a drinking problem, but seeing someone like him who would like sip on a glass of wine and not finish it and not have another one and never get drunk, never drink during the day, I was like, okay, that's what like a normal relationship with alcohol looks like. Like, I want that. And I was, for the first couple years of our marriage, I was actually hiding a lot of my drinking from my husband. Like, he knew I drank, but he didn't know how much. So, but like having him there, and like me being super hungover on a Saturday, and he wants to like go out and do stuff with me, I was like, this is pathetic. And I love what you said at the start of our interview, where what did you say about the contrast of like the abusive person and how they're like a fixer versus like someone who inspires you from day one? That was my husband. He was living, and still is living, like a life that's just so full. He has a passion, he has hobbies, he has creativity, he has like a full life. And he was a role model for me in a way of like, this is the kind of life I want to live. And so he was definitely a big inspiration for me to really figure out my drinking. Not that I wasn't trying before that, but it was like, okay, I've got to get this figured out. And thank God for the treatment I came across, because I was trying to figure it out for years, and it just wasn't working. I kept relapsing, and it was very defeating.
It must have been so hard to like get into a new relationship that is so inspiring, and then still not be able to kick the addiction, and then have all the shame of hiding with your new love.
Yeah. It's the shame is so real, and it was a burden to bear. You know, a lot of people that struggle with their drinking hide it. Like, I've learned that over the years working in the field. It's such a common thing, because when our brain is addicted, we equate this substance to a survival need. So like, you know, we start hoarding it and hiding it. We're afraid we're going to run out. Just like if food was scarce or something, we'd be like stuffing it away. You know, we need to preserve as much as possible. And so, like, out of protection for this addiction, I was hiding it from my husband, and he didn't know as nearly as much as I would, drinking all this secret stashes I had and stuff. But it was such a burden to bear, because I felt like I was lying to him, and I didn't want to be lying to him, but my addiction was so strong that it wasn't a logical choice. I wasn't like, this is bad, I should stop lying to my husband. It was like beyond that. It was this overwhelming desire to keep drinking that overrode like me wanting to please my husband. But I started on the treatment, the Sinclair Method, in 2017, and I didn't tell my husband at first, because he didn't know how bad my drinking was, so I didn't want him to know I was doing this treatment. It's something you can do from home, so it's not like I went away to rehab or anything. And I started the treatment, and after the first month on it, my drinking had already cut down by like probably 20-30% just in the first month, which was a lot for me. I was starting to see myself drink less and have more control and have alcohol-free days and not black out anymore. So that's when I like opened up to him about everything, and it was just such a relief. And he was like, looking back, he was like, yeah, like that makes sense now. You know, you'd be like, I would throw up in the morning in the garbage in the bathroom, and he would like empty the trash and just pretend like nothing happened. But like stuff like that was happening where it was just so shameful. And he didn't have a drinking problem, so I don't think he really knew what to look out for or to know that I was even hiding. But when I opened up to him, he could more clearly see like, okay, I can see now, like you would get really drunk, and I would always lie and be like, oh, I forgot to eat. I must have forgotten. That's why I got so drunk. But really I was like secretly taking shots when he wasn't looking, kind of thing. But just to be honest about it and really actually heal from it was, it was amazing. And I think healing from alcohol addiction allowed me to heal so much of like the trauma of the relationship. So even years later, I was still healing from the trauma of that abusive relationship, and kind of coming to terms with the fact of like, what the heck was that? Like accepting the fact that he probably never even really loved me, and what the relationship was just like a figment of my imagination in a sense. And that was a mourning process. Honestly, I grieved that because I thought it was my Prince Charming. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to mourn when we believed something and we became like we were lied to. I think one of the worst things is to feel like, oh, you lied to me. Like, I didn't need you to want me, or I didn't need you not to want me, but like, just why lie to me? Like, that's such a hard thing to process. And so, he did just see you as a means to an end. Narcissists don't know how to love because, what I always teach, what everyone, who understands is you can't really love someone else if you don't know how to love yourself. And so if he didn't know how to love himself, because he was never taught actual love, he was taught how to hide and suppress all of his negative emotion because his dad couldn't handle the negative emotion and the pain, because that meant he failed his child as well as failing his wife. And the death and the mourning of losing his wife was like creeping into this child who now became an adult, who was raised to never know how to feel his negative feelings. So he just became a monster, and therefore you were his teddy bear, like his teddy bear. Like I call it raggedy bear syndrome. Like when you see like a 3-year-old with their like teddy bear that they've had since birth, and you're like, that freaking bunny or bear looks like messed up, like it's missing an eye, it's like missing an ear, and it's like, yo, like that teddy bear has had like an intense life. But
that is so accurate.
Yeah, man. But to the 3-year-old, they're like holding I wish I had something near me. But for the 3-year-old, they're like, I love my teddy bear. Yeah. My teddy bear can't leave me. My teddy bear has to come everywhere I want. I love my teddy bear. And you're like, I don't know, that teddy bear looks a little messed up. So I feel like narcissists have that, and then the victim have that. Like they are so loved and they're needed and they have to go everywhere they go, but like they look like they've been through hell and back because it was never about them. Because they didn't have a life. They had a purpose to serve the fear, insecurity, pain, and trauma of the 3-year-old who never wanted to be alone because they never wanted to feel their dark feelings. So they just grabbed that teddy bear. You come with me. And so again, it's like very subtle, because you would think the teddy bear is so loved. He loves it. But if you look at it, it's messed up. So I think women have to just, we as women have to say to ourselves, how do I give myself attention?
Mm-hmm.
How do I give myself self-love? How do I never become the abuser to my husband or to my children by accident because I'm still carrying around trauma that I haven't processed?
Yeah.
Because only hurt people hurt.
Yeah.
So, you go.
And I was just going to say too, like, I remember before I got into this relationship, I would hear stories of women in abuse, and I'd be like, why do they stay? Like, that's like this logical question any normal person would ask. And I never thought I would be that person, but then I wound up in that. Because like you said, it's this gradual thing where in a lot of narcissists, it starts off as love bombing and you just feel them like the most special person in the world, which I would say that should be like the number one red flag. If you're being loved bombed in the beginning, like, whoa, slow down a bit. And then I also remember thinking, like, how do people get addicted to alcohol? Like, why would you do that? Like, why, I could never imagine being that person. I pictured like a homeless guy under the bridge being addicted to alcohol, and then I got addicted to alcohol. So just like thinking that won't ever happen to us, like, it happened to me and I never thought it would. And it was this slow progression of falling into this, both the addiction and the abusive relationship, and not really even being aware of what was happening because the codependency was so strong, because I saw his potential. I wanted to fix him. I felt like he loved me, though it wasn't that. And yeah, it's just amazing how we can wind up in circumstances we never thought we would. And because of my own trauma, like, had I had really good values instilled in me and like my dad really coaching me growing up, like, don't be with a man like this, look for these qualities. And again, not to bash my dad at all, he did the best he could, but I didn't really know the red flags to look out for, and I didn't love myself at that time. And I didn't respect myself. And so I was willing to tolerate people treating me horribly because that's how I saw myself. And my purpose became like being his teddy bear. Like that analogy is, yeah, I was like, whatever he needs, whatever he wants, just like bend and mold and be his thing because that's how you get love and attention. Love and, yeah, attention, even if it's toxic attention.
Just as the last question while we wrap up this really, really powerful episode, what was one of the main lies that you told yourself during the abuse when he would hit you, when he would maybe, do things that were putting you down, verbal abuse, sexual or physical, when he would do these things where you're like, actually, this doesn't feel good and there is something wrong here. Obviously, it took 5 years to get out because you almost died, but all all those moments in between, what did you tell yourself after the horrific events that kept you in it?
The thing that's coming up for me is that, like, it could be worse. Like, it's not that bad. There's good times. He loves me. He doesn't mean it. I'm not going to do better. Like, I just have to make it work. So I think really justifying things, not respecting myself enough and having boundaries enough to where, like, I'm not going to tolerate this. Like, he just kicked the crap out of me. Like, that is not how I should be treated. I don't think I had that self-respect enough to do that. And so I would always justify, like, well, it's not that bad. The last incident was the worst. And had the cops not come, I don't know if I would have stayed after that. Because I was literally afraid for my life. There would be times where I was really scared when the abuse would happen. One time I remember I was laying there and he was like choking me so bad where I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna pass out. But yeah, it was always justifying it and making excuses like that it could be worse, it's not that bad, we love each other, he doesn't mean it, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's really crazy because you just mentioned like strangulation, and the guest that I had on right before you a little bit earlier in the day had a similar incident where she left only because he was strangling her to death and a neighbor called the cops. So like literally identical to your story. And I'm going to make myself cry. The reason I have this podcast is the stories of all these women, and a lot of them are white, successful women. Sometimes, like you said, the alcoholics, the drunk at the bar, or for me, as a white person, it was like, oh, the people who are domestic abuse are people of color or people of lower class, right? And I'm not trying to offend everyone. I'm just saying that's, maybe what you think based on movies or stereotyping. And this podcast, the majority of the guests are white, educated, beautiful, smart women. And so it's important that like we see that 43% of all female homicides in the United States are done by the intimate partner, meaning almost half the women that are getting killed in the United States are done by their intimate partner. And so these stories need to be heard because they're extraordinarily similar, like freakishly similar, and extraordinarily prevalent. And so thank you, Katie, for coming on and telling your story so that a woman who God will put in her path, your story, can be like, holy shit, I'm saying it's not that bad. And I don't want to be like Katie or Mike or, Karen, who was earlier than you, where it ends up one day I'm being strangled and I might not be, the percent that make it.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. It's very cathartic to talk about it, honestly, especially now that I feel like I'm, so far removed from it and healed. I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be scars, but had I listened to something like this when I was in it, it probably would have woken me up a lot sooner. I didn't know. And when you're so in it and then you have psychological manipulation and abuse so much to where you don't believe you can get out and you can't survive without them and you don't believe you can do any better, it's like you can't see your way out of it. So I pray that this comes across the video feed of someone who needs it.
I mean, thank you, Katie, so much for being on the 100% podcast. Where can people find you, connect with you, get invested in anything that you sell, promote, or share?
Yeah, so I run an organization called Thrive Alcohol Recovery. I work exclusively with the Sinclair Method treatment, which is the protocol I used. It can be done from home for people who are drinking too much and want to cut back, even if you don't feel like you want to quit drinking. And my website is thrivealcoholrecovery.com, and tons of information on there. All our socials, you can reach out, and our socials, I'm on nearly all platforms with the handle Thrive Alcohol Recovery.
Amazing. I love that because, thrive is a very powerful term that people misunderstand. So many women are just trying to survive. They're just trying to survive and they think it's not that bad, or I should be grateful. I should be grateful. And I'm like, yo, there's a whole word called thrive, which is way beyond surviving. And it doesn't mean that you need to accept abuse or neglect or alcoholism or pornography addiction or him not showing up or him taking all your money or anything that you are surviving through. Yeah. That's not what you were born for. That's not what you were destined for. That's not why you came into this earth. And so I actually love the word thrive because that's what I do. I help women learn how to thrive within themselves and therefore attract all different types of relationships, even work relationships, friendships, all parallel if we're down to tolerate pain. Friends and business partners also test boundaries and they say, how willing is this person to tolerate abuse, pain, pushing boundaries, taking advantage? And so if we don't have that sense of self to love ourselves, to increase our worth, to hold our boundaries with connection to ourself and God, then, we can still attract situations that aren't for our highest best and then survive through them instead of curating a life where we know how to avoid and thrive.
Amen. Yeah. And I think Kai, you are doing amazing work to put this out there for people because it's so cathartic. I know for me, I would listen to abuse stories, even alcohol recovery stories, and it was just so healing to know I'm not alone and be able to have other people articulate what I was going through that I could not yet articulate because I was in it and didn't quite understand. So I just commend you for the work you're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah.
Well, for everyone listening, please reach out to Katie if you have any alcoholism or anything that you want to connect with her. Her socials will be linked down below in the show notes. I am your host, Chaya Garcia, and if you are looking to enhance your relationships or attract a new relationship and you want to make sure you don't accidentally fall into the subtle signs of narcissism and addiction, which are totally rampant but totally visible during date number 1, then I have freebies and filters. And if you want to book a free discovery call, you just go to www.connectwithkaya.com and you hop on a call with me. And the first call is totally free just to see what I can do for you. So this has been another powerful, beautiful, transformative episode of the 100% podcast, where yes, you're 100% effed up and still simultaneously 100% lovable. And nothing that you've done and nothing that has been done to you ever diminishes, not even 1%, of how truly lovable you are. I'm your host, Chaya Garcia, and I will see you on the next episode.